This legislation places an undue barrier in front of law-abiding gun owners by requiring a state-issued license in order to obtain a firearm, and does not do anything to stop the flow of firearms in the criminal illicit gun market that operates in this state. It takes the waiting process from 7 days to 30, further delaying the exercise of a core part of that right, the ability to purchase a firearm for self-defense. And as Sarah said, it invests entirely too much power in law enforcement. It gives them the ability to decide who and who does not get to exercise their constitutional right. Unlike our permit to carry law, as amended, this bill, if you're wrongfully denied by the law enforcement chief, and you prevail on appeal in court, there's no provision to get your legal or court costs covered by the law enforcement leader that wrongfully denied you. This bill creates a paperwork trail with law enforcement, firearms dealers, and private citizens that amounts to a de facto registry of firearms and their owners that can be accessed by any law enforcement officer without a warrant or without a subpoena or any form of court order. The form that gun owners will be required to keep for 20 years contains the make and model of the firearm and the serial number of the firearm, none of which is necessary to record for a background check. Why is that any of the government's business? And guess what? If you can't produce this when the police officer knocks on your door at 3 a.m. and demands you to produce it, you get to get charged with a gross misdemeanor and go to jail. And that can happen 19 years, 364 days after the transaction. This bill creates a financial burden in front of exercising one's specific enumerated constitutional right to possess a firearm. You have to get a permit to purchase. That takes time. By the way, only during the business week, during business hours. Or a permit to carry. That's time plus costs. If you don't want to do the paperwork process, you got to go to a dealer. If you're in Minneapolis or St. Paul, too bad. No dealers, because the city has zoned them out of existence. You get to pay the dealer for the transfer. $20, $50, $100 is not uncommon. And if you're transferring this for someone for hunting purposes for a long hunting trip, you get the privilege of doing this twice on both ends of the equation. Data from the US Department of Justice's Bureau of Justice Statistics show that 8% of criminals are obtaining their firearms through private sales. They're not getting these from law-abiding gun owners. A 19-year study out of California by folks on the other end of this issue from us, at the University of California, Davis, looking at 2 decades of data since California passed the same law, that law had absolutely no impact on homicide or suicide rates with firearms in California. 79% of our firearm deaths here are suicides. Most of these are men in greater Minnesota, 45 to 64 years old. There's no evidence that shows these individuals are prohibited persons that are going to be stopped through this form of a background check. These individuals are almost certainly using firearms they have owned for years. Earlier, the Nicollet County attorney testified on this bill that it strikes the right balance between constitutional rights and public safety. But that's not the standard for how we evaluate burdening the Second Amendment anymore. In the Supreme Court's Bruin case, that standard is text, history, and tradition from 1791, not balancing of rights. Criminals in Minnesota today obtain their firearms for their crimes by theft. That's a state and federal crime. Straw purchases, a state and federal crime. They get it through an illegal transaction on the illicit market between individuals that are also committing a crime, state and federal. When 2 individuals meet for an illicit firearm transaction behind the Cub Food up the road from my house in Arden Hills, they're already committing multiple felonies in state and federal law. If this bill becomes law, it's not going to stop theft, it's not going to stop straw purchases, and it's not going to stop the trunk loads of guns that Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says are coming into Minneapolis. We should vote this bill down, and the body should instead pursue laws that punish criminals that are engaged in the illicit gun market and ensure that courts are properly sentencing prohibited persons arrested in possession of a firearm or ammunition in violation of current law and the criminal market and the individuals running it that provides those firearms. Thank you.